Hey and welcome. It's been a long time, I know. What I'd like to do today is something different than I normally do. So if you're at my channel, you're typically here for, video games or chess or SNK or Fist of the North Star. Today what I want to do is something totally different. What I want to do is I want to showcase the Japanese weapons that I got, from my time staying in Japan. And I want to just give essentially just a general, weapons 101 guide for Japanese weapons. And yeah, hopefully you'll learn something along the way. The first thing that I ever got in Japan, the first weapon that I ever bought, it was the first time that I went to Japan, and it was 2004 when I was visiting, at the time, my girlfriend and now my wife. And this was in Shizuoka. And I bought the rail pass. So the rail pass means you can take any JR line anywhere you want to. So I took the train to Kyoto, and in Kyoto there was this place called Nijo Castle. Nijo Castle is famous for having these floors that if you step on them, they make this sound, they say that's kind of like a nightingale. I love that castle, and I love Kyoto itself, because I love traditional Japanese things, like traditional Japanese anything. And this place was just really, really nice. And across the street from that castle, there was this sword shop. Now, at that time, I was just barely learning Japanese. I just knew how to say very, very few things. But I went there, and I was just fascinated by the swords that I saw there. There was, a lot of swords that would, like, have the handle removed, and it would, have somebody's signature down it. It might have, like, the date that it was made. They would say this sword is, like, 400 or 500 years old or something like that. And for me, it was really, really interesting. And I was trying to ask them, like, oh, can I take a picture? They were like, these ones you can, these ones don't. I couldn't understand why at the time. Like, maybe, some of them were actually used in war. Maybe some of them actually had killed people, I don't know what the reason was, but what I decided on, I bought one thing, and it was this. So I'm going to try to show the dimensions as much as I can. This is the ninja sword, sometimes called the chokuto. Okay, the kanji means like literally straight blade. You notice the ninja sword is very easily distinguishable from the samurai sword because of this, kind of cross-guard hilt is square. And chokuto, it's a straight blade. So I'm going to see if I can show as best I can. But this blade isn't curved, right? It's just a straight blade, and it's fairly small. Okay. I guess that was just part of, like, it was meant for assassinations. It was not meant to, like, fight, several warriors. Whatever the reason, that's how you can tell, ninja blades from samurai blades. And I'm going to see if I can show the blade itself as best I can. You can see this is a ceremonial blade. This is not the kind of thing that you want to bring into battle. Even though it is a nice thick piece of metal, the problem is, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, the problem is the tang. The tang is the part of the sword that goes into the hilt. And for things like this that are mostly decorative, it only goes to about here. So even if you are, imagining yourself as some ninja warrior, keep on whacking it around too much, and it'll just break off. So, yeah. But anyway, it's good for ceremony. It looks really nice. It's not really sharp at all. Okay, I can, like, rub my thumb up against this, nothing's gonna happen. But anyway, this is the ninja sword. And it's also got a good case. This is called the saya, the scabbard. Ends with a nice, metal point on that end. This is wooden, so I guess it could also double as a kind of sword, or a kind of weapon. Okay, and that was the ninja sword. Again, the first thing that I ever got in Japan, and that was 2004. And it was mostly recently that I got more into Japanese weapons. So I've been buying more recently, and it's just been such an interesting, thing to collect. Having like little bits of money, spare bits of money. So I'll just buy these things, and you can find these really, really easily on Amazon. The next thing. This is my kunai. and, you know, looks nice and small and innocent from outside there, and then bam, look at that blade. Okay, this blade is a badass motherfucker. This is really, really sharp, both sides. It's hard for me to get a grip on it because, I don't know, just my big paw is like so big that when I put it over, this last part doesn't fit over so well. It's like a good little jabbing weapon to use at like close quarters if you don't have a sword, if you need something to fend somebody off. But, you know, somebody with like a katana or something like that will slice you down pretty easy. These things are meant to be thrown, and I'm hoping there's a way to throw it from the backside like this. I don't see how that would really work well. It seems like if you threw it like this, the balance would get off very easily. It seems like you would want to throw it by the blade, but this blade is really sharp on both sides, so I'm not really sure the best way to hold it and throw it, because every way that I want to hold it, I can't really throw it that fast, or else I'm going to slice my own hand open, you know? But anyway, this is the kunai, and it's really just... I love this blade. Okay, I want to show it as best I can. It's really long, you know, really thick. It's a really, really good piece of steel in there, so... These are pretty cool. I think what I want to do is maybe have one for ceremony that I could show and kind of keep real nice. And then maybe I'll have like a couple more in the future that I'll actually practice trying to throw well with. But this one I've not tried so far. So that's the kunai. Next, this is kind of my little baby. This is the first of its kind that I got. Two things to say about this. Number one, this kind of sword, this kind of small sword like this, is called the Tanto. Okay, whenever you see like a small one, and you'll notice it's missing any kind of hilt. So these right here, these kind of swords, they're called Shirasaya. Shirasaya literally means like white scabbard, so saya is the scabbard. But if it just like runs, if it kind of looks like it's one continuous piece of wood, then it's called Shirasaya. And this is a Shirasaya Tanto. And again, this blade is really, really nice. I'll try to get it in as close to the camera as I can so you can see kind of the edge. You can see like the decoration on it. Okay, it looks really nice. And you see this little piece in here. This, again, not being a total expert, but I believe that this indicates the tongue. So the tongue, as I said, is the part of the metal that goes into the handle. So this actually has a cross piece that holds the tongue in, so it's a full tongue. So in other words, you know, this is really strong if you want to hack away at something. It's not going to break off in your hand. So yeah, this is really nice. And again, you can just see how sharp, you know, how well made that blade edge is. Okay, so this is my little Shirasaya Tanto. Tanto! This was made for the most, you know, painful act that you can imagine, which was the harakiri. And if you know how it's meant to be done, I think a lot of us who are Westerners, we don't know exactly how it's meant to be done. We just think somebody takes a blade and like stabs themselves in the stomach. That's not really it. What you would do is you would take the tanto, stab it in on one side, and then you drag it across. Okay, you have to do what's called harakiri, which literally means cutting the stomach. So you have to slice your own stomach open, okay? Which was terribly painful. When I show my students, you know, in the class, I show my students the movie The Last Samurai. There was a really good scene in there where the guy, you know, is doing what's needed of him. He is, you know, stabbing himself, and then somebody else comes along and slices his head off, and that's actually a big mercy, because you can imagine the horrible pain, right, of slicing your own stomach open. You want your pain to end as soon as you can, so someone would come and cut their head off. And if you're really interested in that kind of thing, that kind of story, the story of the 47 Ronin, it's really, really interesting to know that, you know, 46 or 47 of these men would actually do that just out of loyalty to, you know, their master. It's pretty amazing. So anyway, that is the Tanto. That is the small size sword. This right here, This is called Jutte, or I've seen it, spelled Jitte, but it's actually Jutte. Jutte literally means 10 hands. I don't know, what that means or what it's in reference to. This is kind of like it's kind of like the police weapon. It was the weapon of choice of like police and like, military or guards, back in Edo times. What it basically is, and I think that this is pretty authentic to what the size is. It's not so big. It's about as big as my arm. And it's just a really solid, circular, piece of metal. And it's a really good, it's got a really good weight to it. I bought this just last summer when I was in my wife's hometown. We went to a place called Kakigawa, and there was a castle. And I asked the guy behind the counter, like, can you actually do damage? Can you actually, like, kill somebody? And he was, like, smiling. Yeah, I guess you can, but... So, yeah, you can actually, like, thump somebody with this thing. It makes a good weapon. It's just that it's short range. Okay, the reason for this kind of thing was you were not allowed to carry, swords into the Imperial Palace. So in order to have something, something for, like, police to have that assassins couldn't easily just slice somebody open with, that's why they had, the Jutte. So, I like it. I like the tassel. It looks really nice. I couldn't imagine using it in a practical sense so much, but right back in the day. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is what's called Bokken. Bokken, ken is the sword. Moku, often pronounced also in combination boku, is wood. So these are the wooden swords. I got this. This is the first one I got. I got two of these because I got one for me, one for my son. These are really, really nice. These are really fun to practice with. This is the katana size one. So I'm going to try to see if I can fit the whole length of it in the shot. This is the katana size one. And the wood to this particular one is very light. And it's just a good, little practice sword if you want to practice, like, slicing, if you want to practice blocking, if you want to practice thrusting, It's a really, really good practice sword. I would suggest it. And you could find it pretty easily online for about, what? Maybe $10, $15. They're pretty good to have around. I would really recommend them. But they're not really good, at least this one, this light wood, it's not really good for whacking. Like, you don't want to, like me and my son, I tell him, like, don't just whack the hell out of it because you're going to break it pretty easy. It's just wood. I've seen other ones that are made, and it looks almost exactly the same, but it's made out of this kind of plastic. So I think that might even be better because if it's plastic, it's not going to break per se. This wood really will, like, split and break, but the plastic will stay together. Okay, so anyway, this is the first one, and this is katana sized. The second one that I got, and again, I have this from my son too. This is another Bokken, another wooden sword, but a few differences. This one has some detail carved into the wood, and the wood is a different kind of quality. So this wood is like thicker. It's like a heavier wood. So even though this one is, smaller than the one that I just showed you, this one is actually about twice as heavy because of the wood. This one would make a fairly decent weapon on its own, in like some sort of street fight, if I were to have, either one to choose from. This one would be better because this thing could really, it's got a really solid little thick whacking. Again, these things are awesome. They're well made. The only problem is if you whack around too much, you might take the little guard, the guard straps kind of out of position. But this is really, really fun to play around with. These Bokken, they're no joke. And they're good just to practice technique with. So, as I said, I got, two of these, one for me and one for my son. And again, this is the katana is the main size. This middle size, if I hadn't said before, is the wakizashi. And let me show you next. Okay, so these are the Bokken. Let me show you next. This is a set. Often you'll see like a set of like 3 swords together, of like differing lengths, right? So we talked about the big one is the is the katana. The medium is the wakizashi, and the small one is the Tanto. And let me show you an example of these. And these are also Shirasaya. But these are just decorative. Okay, so this is the Tanto Shirasaya because it doesn't have the handle. Okay. And it's really well made as long as you just know, you just acknowledge within yourself it's only for decoration. You know, like, I like these little, like, you know, ridges along the side, but it's not sharp at all, right? You can't really cut much with it. It's only there for decoration. But again, it's really cool. It looks, you know, it looks really nice. Remember what I said before, this right here, this Shirasaya, the one that I really like, it has this little piece in it, which means the tongue goes all the way in. This one doesn't have that same thing, so you're not really sure. I'm pretty sure the tongue doesn't go that far. So in other words, if I were to take this and start whacking around things with it, it'll break pretty easy. Okay, this is only for decoration. But again, this is Tanto, this is Shirasaya, and I personally like Shirasaya more than I like the normal one. The normal one is called Koshirae. Koshirae is the normal scabbard, but I just like these ones better. Just aesthetically, looks more pleasing to me. I mean, in a pinch, if somebody broke into the house right now, I could use this to stab, but you wouldn't want to like slice with something like this too much. Okay, and just for completeness' sake, I'll show you the rest of them. Again, this kanji right here is the kanji for sword. I believe this is katana. Okay, so they all look like this. They're just different sizes. Okay, so here's the Tanto. Here's the medium. Here's the wakizashi. Again, decorative. Everything is the same. Not a full tongue. Either a half tongue or maybe a rat tail tongue. Just not fully inside. Not a battle weapon, but it looks really nice. This is the kind of thing that, you know, you use for decoration. But again, nothing wrong with that. Okay, and then finally, I'm going to show you the same set. And this is the big daddy to that same set. Shirasaya katana. I'll try to get as much on camera as I can. This is the full size. So again, something like this, you might want to take her out just to show, just to kind of feel in your hands. But I really wouldn't recommend even like taking a few practice whacks, because I feel like if you swing too hard, I mean, this piece of metal, it's a big piece of metal which has a bit of weight to it, right? And if you're whacking around, I don't know like how strongly it's attached to the handle. I'm afraid like if you keep on whacking, you know, too much, it'll like fly off the handle and hurt somebody. But again, just for decoration. I don't know about you, I just love Shirasaya. I just love this kind of blade, this kind of handle. I don't know why. I like it better than Koshirae. So, this is my other kind of decoration set. And now we're getting to our last pieces. And these ones are truly my babies. This right here has been waiting in the backgrounds. This is my favorite one of the collection, so I'm just gonna slow motion it out there so you could feel just about how big this one is. This is a katana, Shirasaya, but this is full tongue. And it's sharp. Now this is in, when I got it, and still now, it's got a little bit of oil on it. So hopefully the blade, you know, registers nice and clean on camera. This thing is a badass motherfucker. It's attached really well into the handle. And I just like this style. You know, I've been watching recently Zatoichi. If you don't know what that is, it's like a movie about a blind swordsman. And this is the kind of blade that he uses. He uses this kind of Shirasaya blade. And I don't know, I just like it so much. Hopefully you can see, hopefully the camera picks it up, but it is a nice, thick piece of metal. And fortunately it's attached well in there, so I wouldn't really have a problem taking this out just to like practice chop, right? And it's a good thing to have something like this just for like home defense. Honestly speaking, you know, in this day and age, having a sword, you know, in the age of guns, is kind of a silly thing, you know, as far as defense. But I don't know, I feel safe knowing that this bad boy is in the house, you know, just a few meters away from where I'm at. So again, this is my baby. Maybe one of these days I'll make a name for it. But I just got it recently, so for the time being, this is just my Shirasaya katana. This is my favorite, but this is not the best. The best is what I saved for last. Okay, so I got this blade fairly cheap. If I would have paid full price, it would have been about $300. This bad boy. This is the real thing. This is Koshirae, so it's the normal, right? The normal scabbard. Koshirae katana. Okay, now look at this thing. Again, I'm gonna try to show as best as I can the full dimensions of this thing on camera. Okay, this is full tongue. This is very sharp. This has the handguard. Right, the Shirasaya is not the kind of thing you would ever want if you were like in the military on the battlefield. This is the kind of sword that you would want if you were like actually on a battlefield and if you actually had to hack away at bad guys, you know, until you drop. This is the kind of thing that you would want at your side. Again, I hope the camera is picking these things up, just how thick, you know, that metal is. This also had some oil on it, you know, just for keeping. So I'm hoping that the blade doesn't look like it's dirty. It just has that oil on it for keeping, but very, very nice blade, very sharp, very well made. Again, this is a badass motherfucker. This is the kind of thing that you can just see really like slicing people's, you know, heads off, slicing people's hands off. This is what I want as far as home defense. You know, if there's one thing to reach for, this would be it. It's just a really, really nice, really well made blade. Okay, you can see every part of it. This is my Koshirae katana. And I like it. I like it a lot. Again, Shirasaya's problem is like right here. I think this is a really big deal, you know, as far as like being on a battlefield, because you don't want that cheap thing where the person just like slices down and like cuts your hand, you know, the hand that's holding the sword. And the Shirasaya, right? Anything Shirasaya, unfortunately, you can't really guard your hands against that kind of cheap attack. This one, at least you have this hand guard, and hopefully, if you're in battle, you have those gloves. But another good thing, or just one more thing to explain about the Japanese sword. Katanas, I think they're commonly thought of as just one of the best, you know, one of the best weapons as far as like, you know, like swords, you know, like slicing weapons on the battlefield. Doesn't matter what country, katanas were like one of the best. They were just so well made. And the katana, the size and dimensions, they're basically like the medieval bastard sword. So for those who don't know, the bastard sword is the sword that you could use with either one or two hands. That's what most katana are. Okay, so you can... It feels very nice with one hand. I don't know why Japanese did that. Like, I don't know why... It's just like Japanese don't... I don't want to say they don't have shields, but typically they don't. Like, at least not like, you know, medieval Europeans. They would have sword and shield, right? So they would develop that style that's like one-handed sword with a shield. But Japanese, they were all about this type, this bastard sword type. So bastard sword means you could use one or two. So it's very comfortable like this. put your second hand on there, and then now you've got some really, really good power, right? You can like slice, you know, and this big thick blade, you know, it'll do it. It'll do the trick. So, anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope you like what you saw. It's always good for me to kind of get these on tape because, you know, who knows what happens in the future. In the future, what I would like is to have a big collection of, like, you know, swords from all kinds of countries. You know, like as authentic as I can get, but also probably like replicas are the best, just because, you know, replicas look a lot nicer. And the real swords, it's very hard to find a really good functional one, right? This one, as I said, sorry, not speaking into the camera. This one, I said, is as good as it gets, like, you know, in modern times. But honestly, you know, the ceremonial swords are fine because, you know, I don't really want to get into a real sword fight in my real life. And it's good to, like, be able to see, you know, it's good to be able to see how it would have looked at that time at its best. So don't knock replicas, right? Replicas, they give you a good idea of like what it would be like in its best form. Okay, because you're not really gonna get into fights. But if you are, you want something like this. Okay, anyway, thanks for watching. Mite kurete, arigatou gozaimasu. Sayonara.